funny how things change the moment you stop trying. When you were giving her attention, she seemed distant, uninterested, maybe even cold. But the second you step back, the second you remove yourself from the equation, she starts to notice. Suddenly, she's watching your stories, lingering on your name, reminiscing about the moments she once took for granted. Why? Because the cold shoulder effect is real. Your silence speaks volumes. More than any text, any apology, or any desperate attempt to win her back ever could. When you were available, she didn't see your value. But now that you've disappeared, she's feeling that void. And that void? It's powerful. Today, we're diving deep into the psychology behind this shift. Why walking away flips the power dynamic. Why emotional distance triggers desire. And why she just can't seem to let you go, even when she swore she was done. Let's get into it. Number 1. Your emotional control is magnetic. When most men feel ignored or rejected, they react emotionally. They lash out, beg for closure, or try to force a conversation. What they don't realize is that these reactions only push a woman further away. The more desperate a man appears, the more certain she becomes that she made the right decision in pulling away. Now picture the opposite. A man who doesn't react, a man who remains composed, as if nothing has changed. He doesn't chase. He doesn't demand attention. He simply carries on with his life. And this is where something powerful happens. She starts to feel your absence in a way she never expected. By not reacting, by not seeking validation, you create a void, and nature hates a void. The mind seeks to fill empty spaces, and now, instead of focusing on why she left, she starts wondering why you didn't chase. She expected a reaction. She assumed she had control over your emotions. But when you remain unaffected, it disrupts her expectations. Did she misjudge you? Was she wrong about your worth? These thoughts begin to creep in, and suddenly she finds herself questioning her decision. And that's precisely why she can't let go. Your emotional control makes you unpredictable, intriguing, something she didn't expect. She starts wondering what's going on in your head. She starts missing the attention you once gave so freely. And as much as she tries to convince herself she made the right choice, she begins to feel the weight of your silence. Imagine a woman walking away, fully expecting you to run after her. But instead, you stand firm, unbothered, content with your own presence. She turns back, just for a second, to see if you're still there. And when she sees you've moved on, that's when the pull begins. Because nothing is more powerful than a man who doesn't need to prove his worth. He simply knows it. Number 2. Uncertainty fuels the fire. A woman who knows you're always there has no reason to think about you. She has certainty. And certainty, ironically, is one of the biggest attraction killers. But the moment she doesn't know what you're thinking, the moment she wonders if you're still interested, that's when she starts obsessing. Uncertainty triggers intrigue. It makes her replay moments in her head, overanalyze her decisions, and second-guess whether she really wants to let you go. When you pull away, when you stop giving her the validation she once took for granted, something shifts in her mind. The same man she thought she could move on from suddenly becomes a mystery, an unfinished story she can't stop reading. She wonders why you're no longer seeking her out, why your attention is no longer a given, and that void, it pulls her in. A man who lives with purpose and direction never makes himself predictable for the sake of others. He remains a mystery, not because he's playing games, but because he has a life that exists outside of any woman. A Stoic man understands that his happiness is not dependent on whether she stays or leaves. His value is not determined by her attention. Think about the men women chase the most. It's never the ones who are overly eager. It's the ones who are slightly out of reach. That's not a coincidence. When a woman feels your absence, she begins to reflect on what she lost. She starts recalling the best moments, amplifying your value in her mind. That's the paradox. Your silence speaks louder than words. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If your thoughts revolve around whether she misses you, you hand over your power. But if your thoughts are centered on your own path, your goals, your mission, then she has no choice but to feel the weight of your absence." Attraction thrives on a balance of presence and mystery. When you give too much, she feels no reason to miss you. But when you step back, she starts questioning everything. That's when the cold shoulder effect takes hold. Not because you're being manipulative, but because you've returned to your natural state. A man who doesn't need to chase. A man who is perfectly content whether she stays or not. And that, ironically, makes her want you even more. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced this shift in a relationship? Maybe you pulled away and saw a completely different reaction than you expected. Drop a comment below and share your perspective. Let's start a conversation. Number 3. Nostalgia keeps her hooked. One of the most underestimated psychological triggers is nostalgia. When you pull back, when you give her the cold shoulder, something fascinating happens. Her mind starts working against her. The little things that once annoyed her, the small arguments, the frustrations, all begin to fade. In their place, what remains are the highlights, the moments that made her feel alive, the times when she felt truly seen and valued. This is why people often romanticize their past, even when it wasn't perfect. The mind, in its selective memory, has a way of softening the edges of conflict and sharpening the warmth of connection. And suddenly, she finds herself remembering the way you used to laugh together, the comfort of your presence, and the security she felt when you were around. She doesn't recall the minor annoyances. She recalls how you made her feel. A Stoic man understands this, but he doesn't fall into the same trap. He doesn't chase ghosts of the past or dwell on what was. He accepts that memories are just echoes. They hold no real power unless he gives it to them. While she lingers in nostalgia, he remains unmoved, centered in the present. He doesn't need to remind her of his value. Her own mind will do that for him. And the more she reflects, the more she begins to feel the weight of her own decision. Doubt creeps in. Was she too hasty? Did she misjudge his worth? The cold shoulder effect works because it forces her to sit with these questions without the reassurance of your presence. When you withdraw, you create space, not just physical, but psychological. And in that space, she starts to realize just how much she felt for you, how much she still does. She may not admit it outright, but that nostalgia is pulling her back. And while she struggles with it, you remain steady, unaffected. Because you know the truth. Your value was never tied to her validation in the first place. Number 4. She now sees your worth. If you could eat your favorite food every day without any restrictions, how long would it take before you got bored of it? The same principle applies to attraction. What is abundant is rarely valued. When you pull away, when you become scarce, something shifts in her mind. She may have once taken your presence for granted, thinking you would always be there, always available. But now you've introduced uncertainty. Your absence becomes louder than your words ever were. And in that silence, she starts to see what she overlooked. Your value. It's not about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about understanding a simple truth. People only deeply appreciate what they believe they might lose. When you were always around, she never had to question what life was like without you. But now she does. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Think about that in the context of relationships. The moment you step back, the moment you stop overextending, she feels a shift. She starts craving what she once overlooked. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because she's realizing that your presence wasn't guaranteed. She's experiencing a kind of emotional scarcity, and that changes everything. You see, most people don't reflect on what they have until it's gone or slipping away. When you were there, giving your time, your energy, your attention, she never questioned its importance. But your absence forces her to confront a truth she never had to face before. You were a rare presence, not a disposable one. And here's the kicker. The more you chase, the less valuable you seem. But the moment you step back, the moment you reclaim your own sense of worth, she starts questioning herself. Why isn't he chasing? Did I misjudge him? Was he more valuable than I realized? The doubt creeps in, and suddenly, she's the one feeling uncertain. That's the power of knowing your worth. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to beg for validation. You simply exist in your own space, just as a Stoic would, unmoved by fleeting emotions, grounded in self-respect. And when you do that, she can't let go, because now the weight of your absence speaks louder than any words ever could. Before we move on, take a second to think about this. How often do we take something for granted until it's no longer within reach? It's a powerful realization, one that changes the way we see people, relationships, and even ourselves. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced this firsthand? Drop a comment and let me know. Or if you're just taking it all in, leave this in the comments. Absence creates value. Let's see who really understands the lesson. Number 5. Why she wants to win you back. Women are competitive by nature. The moment they sense they're losing someone's attention, it sparks an almost instinctive desire to regain it. This is the essence of the cold shoulder effect. Your silence, your absence, it isn't just noticed, it's felt. And for a woman who once held a place in your life, it can be unsettling. She starts to wonder, did I misjudge him? Is he really moving on? Why isn't he chasing me? That uncertainty stirs something deep within her. It's no longer just about missing you. It's about proving to herself that she still has power over you. A woman's ego, just like a man's, doesn't take rejection lightly, even if she was the one who initially pulled away. But here's the key. A Stoic man doesn't react. He doesn't break his silence just because she's suddenly resurfacing. He doesn't rush to reassure her or feed her need for validation. Instead, he remains composed, observing, understanding that real strength comes from self-control, not from chasing someone who once overlooked him. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing her to confront her own feelings. At first, she might throw subtle signals, liking your posts, commenting on things she previously ignored, or sending a casual, "Hey, hope you're doing well," message. These aren't just random acts. They're calculated moves, small tests, to see if she still holds a place in your world. Some women, when faced with this uncertainty, go to the extreme. They might act like they don't care, pretending they've moved on effortlessly, but pay attention. Watch how they linger in your space, how they check your stories, how they suddenly become more interested in things you once shared. That's the paradox of the cold shoulder effect. The more indifferent you seem, the more invested she becomes. A man of wisdom never plays games, but his lack of pursuit naturally creates intrigue. His silence isn't a tactic, it's a reflection of his inner peace. He doesn't need to prove anything to her, and that, paradoxically, makes him even more desirable. So what do? Nothing. You stay grounded. You focus on your own growth, your own journey. And if she comes back, you don't react with desperation or resentment. You remain indifferent, as a Stoic would, because in the end, a man who truly values himself never has to convince someone to stay. They either recognize his worth or they don't. And either way, he remains unmoved. Number 6. Why she can't decide. There's a strange irony in human psychology. People struggle with decisions they've already made. Even when a woman chooses to walk away, she doesn't always feel at peace with it. Instead, the absence of your pursuit leaves her in a mental tug-of-war. See, when a woman rejects you, she expects you to push back, to seek closure, or to make one last effort to win her over. That's the script she's used to. She assumes that her decision will keep you orbiting, feeding her sense of control. But when you break that pattern, when you don't chase, don't seek validation, don't try to convince her of your worth, you disrupt the rhythm she expected. Suddenly, she's left staring into a void, and that void becomes a problem she didn't anticipate. Now she's stuck wondering, did I make the right choice? She might have expected relief from cutting ties, but instead, she feels a creeping discomfort. When you remove yourself completely, without bitterness or attempts to force a reaction, you create a vacuum she wasn't prepared for. She thought she held all the power in the situation. But real power lies in detachment. The moment she realizes that you're truly gone, that you're not fighting for her approval, she begins to feel the weight of her own decision. A Stoic man doesn't interfere with another's choices. He lets them live with the consequences of their actions. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Think about that. You don't have to react. You don't have to engage in her confusion. You don't have to explain yourself. And that silence, that absence, it speaks louder than any plea or argument ever could. Imagine this. She sees you out, carrying on with your life, unaffected. No bitter posts, no late-night texts, no desperate attempts to reignite the past. Just quiet confidence. She might try to test the waters, reaching out subtly, liking an old post, sending a casual, "How have you been?" But here's where the real power is. You don't need to react. The cold shoulder isn't about being cruel, it's about standing firm in your self-respect. And the more you hold your ground, the more the paradox of choice works against her. The decision she once made with certainty now feels shaky. She can't let you go, not because you forced her to stay, but because your unwavering composure makes her question why she ever walked away in the first place. Now, take a moment to consider this. When you remove yourself from the equation, you're not just walking away, you're letting reality do the talking. A woman expects a reaction, a plea, a last attempt to hold on. But when none of that comes, the weight of her decision settles in ways she never anticipated. What do you think? Have you seen this play out in your own experiences? Let me know in the comments. Or, if you're just here absorbing the lesson, drop "Real power is in detachment." Let's move on to the next insight. Number 7. Your growth without her is unsettling. The greatest power move isn't revenge. It isn't begging for another chance. It's becoming better without her. If she expected you to break down, to sulk, or to spiral into self-destruction, nothing will shake her more than seeing you elevate instead. This is the essence of the cold shoulder effect. The undeniable power of moving forward so decisively that she starts to feel the weight of her own decision. This is why, after breakups, people stalk their exes. They're not just curious. They need to confirm that their absence mattered. When she sees you thriving, hitting the gym, building your empire, sharpening your mind, it doesn't just intrigue her, it unsettles her. She expected you to chase, to plead, to validate her importance. But instead, she finds herself questioning, was I ever truly essential to his life? Did I push him towards growth, or was I the one holding him back? A woman can move on when she believes she left an undeniable mark. But when a man grows in ways she never predicted, when his silence is stronger than her presence, doubt creeps in. She might not admit it, but the thought lingers. Did I leave someone who was about to become extraordinary? And that's when the shift happens. The cold shoulder isn't about arrogance or cruelty. It's about indifference rooted in self-respect. When you detach and focus solely on your own evolution, you project a quiet confidence that no amount of begging or pleading could ever achieve. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." A Stoic man doesn't grow to prove a point. He grows because self-improvement is his nature. He isn't moved by the fleeting emotions of others. He is anchored in his own purpose. So once she may have walked away thinking she had the upper hand, your silence, your relentless self-betterment, becomes a mirror reflecting her own choices. She won't just be surprised, she'll be regretful, because nothing haunts a person more than knowing they once had access to something rare and let it slip away. Number 8. She watches from the shadows. She may never admit it, but trust me, she's watching. Maybe she told you she was moving on. Maybe she even posted pictures with her friends, smiling, laughing, looking like she's thriving without you. But the truth? She's still keeping tabs. The cold shoulder effect is real. When she acts distant, when she ignores you, when she gives you nothing but silence, it's not always indifference. Sometimes it's a calculated move, a way to make you feel her absence. But even as she plays that game, she can't help but peek from behind the curtain. Social media has made this easier than ever. She doesn't have to ask around. She just has to scroll. She's checking to see if you've changed, if you're seeing someone new, if your energy is different. She's looking for signs that she mattered, that she left a mark on your life. And if she finds nothing but a man who keeps moving forward, that's when the cold shoulder starts to melt, because nothing is more unsettling than realizing she's losing her grip on your mind. Why does she do this? Because humans crave validation, even when they claim they don't care. She wants to know you're struggling without her. She wants to believe she left an impact. She wants reassurance that she had power over you. But when she sees you standing firm, unshaken, growing into a better version of yourself, it forces her to question everything. The very absence of your reaction becomes the most powerful response you could ever give. This is where Stoicism becomes your advantage. A true Stoic does not seek validation from the outside world. He does not post to prove a point. He does not manipulate perception to appear stronger than he is. He simply is. He walks forward with discipline, not desperation. He builds himself not to impress, but because it is in his nature to improve, and that quiet strength is magnetic. While she watches from the shadows, you continue forward, unbothered, unaffected, untouchable, and that's what keeps her hooked. Because the most intriguing man isn't the one trying to be seen. It's the one so focused on his own path that he doesn't even notice who's watching. Number 9. The push-pull dynamic. At some point, when the silence becomes too much, she will test you. This doesn't necessarily mean she wants you back. It means she wants to see if she still has influence over you. She distanced herself, maybe even rejected you. But now, the absence of your attention gnaws at her. She expected you to linger in the background, to keep orbiting her like a satellite that never drifts too far. But instead, you did something rare, something most men fail to do. You disappeared. A woman doesn't just forget a man who values himself. Your absence creates a void, and that void is uncomfortable, not because she necessarily wants you back, but because she wants to know that she could have you if she wanted to. That's a crucial distinction. So, she pokes at that void. Maybe she sends a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" A message so simple, yet loaded with unspoken intent. Maybe she likes one of your old photos, seemingly out of nowhere, just to see if you'll react. Maybe she posts a cryptic message about missing old times, or a song lyric that conveniently aligns with your past together, knowing you'll see it. And here's where most men fail. They take the bait. They assume this is a green light, that she's finally realizing her mistake, that she's come to her senses and wants to reconcile. So they eagerly rush back in, responding with enthusiasm, undoing all the power they built through distance. They tell themselves, "She must regret losing me," but the reality is far less romantic. She isn't making a grand gesture of reconciliation. She's just checking if she still has you in her pocket. If, at the snap of her fingers, she can still command your attention. Think about a cat. You ignore it, and suddenly, it's rubbing against your leg, demanding your presence. But the moment you reach out too eagerly, it loses interest and walks away again. That's what's happening here. She doesn't necessarily want you back. She just wants to know she could have you if she wanted to. And here's the key lesson. If she truly wanted to return, she wouldn't be playing mind games. She wouldn't be dropping breadcrumbs. She'd be showing up with the full meal. Her test is not an invitation, it's a probe, a subtle way to see if she still has an emotional grip on you. Marcus Aurelius put it best. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. A man of integrity doesn't fall for empty gestures. He recognizes when something isn't sincere and responds with wisdom rather than impulse. He understands that his self-respect is not a toy to be played with, nor a prize to be claimed whenever she feels nostalgic. So when she reaches out with something vague, your response should be just as indifferent. A brief, polite acknowledgement, if anything at all. No chasing, no over-explaining, no eager engagement, just the same cold shoulder she once gave you. Why? Because a man who values himself does not reward inconsistency. She must earn her way back, not waltz in simply because she suddenly feels an emptiness that only your attention can fill. The real test isn't hers, it's yours. Will you maintain your self-respect and continue forward, or will you prove that all she has to do is snap her fingers to get your attention? This moment is where your strength is measured, not in words, not in longing, but in the quiet confidence of a man who knows his worth and refuses to be anyone's fallback option. Number 10. Why she can't let go and why you should. Here's the truth. She may never fully let go, but that's not your concern. Many men get trapped in a cycle of wondering. Does she still think about me? Is she regretting her decision? Will she reach out one day? That kind of thinking is a prison of your own making, an invisible chain keeping you emotionally bound to her, even when she's no longer present. You think you're analyzing her behavior, but really you're just feeding your own attachment, keeping yourself locked in a past that no longer serves you. And here's the paradox of the cold shoulder effect. The more distant and indifferent you become, the harder it is for her to truly let go. That's why she keeps checking your social media, why she finds ways to linger in your world, why she plays the game of hot and cold. It's not about love, it's about control. When she pulled away, she expected you to chase. She expected you to crumble, to validate her importance in your life. But when you didn't, it unsettled her. The moment you stopped feeding her ego, she felt an unexpected void. That's the paradox. Your silence speaks louder than words, and now she's left wondering why she no longer holds the same grip over you. This is where your power lies. You don't need her to let go. You only need yourself to. A Stoic understands that true strength comes not from forcing an outcome, but from embracing reality as it is. You can't control her feelings, her regrets, or her nostalgia. You can't control whether she comes back, lingers, or drifts further away. What you can control is your response. When her passive-aggressive silence no longer affects you, when her attempts to re-enter your life no longer shake your foundation, that's when you've won. Not over her, but over yourself. Because the real lesson of the cold shoulder effect isn't about making her miss you. It's about realizing you don't need her to. Look at history's greatest Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. They all preached the same fundamental truth. Attachments rooted in neediness make you weak. A man who finds peace within himself is untouchable. And that's what this moment is offering you. Not just a way to win her back, but a path to something far greater. Self-mastery. If she ever comes back, you won't even have to decide. Because by the time she realizes your value, you'll have already moved on. And that is the ultimate victory. And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway. True power isn't in making her miss you. It's in reaching a place where it no longer matters if she does. The cold shoulder effect works because it shifts the dynamic. Removing you as an option forces her to reconsider your worth. But the real lesson here isn't about playing mind games or manipulating emotions. It's about understanding your own value and refusing to let someone else define it. When you detach from the need for validation, you step into the mindset of a Stoic, a man who controls his emotions, who remains centered no matter what happens around him. If she comes back, it's not because you chased, it's because you became the kind of man worth chasing. And if she doesn't, you've already won because your growth, your confidence, and your purpose were never dependent on her presence. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced this shift, the moment when your absence changed everything? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And if you found this video valuable, make sure to hit that like button. It helps spread the message to more men who need to hear this. Also, don't leave just yet. Check out the recommended videos on your screen right now. They'll take you even deeper into the Stoic mindset and how to master attraction through emotional control. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay Stoic.